Hello everyone, how you doing today? Thought I would get working on that tank some more, try to get more of that interior finished up from the last video. And I also been working on these Tyche miners here. I've got now 4 versions, and I think I'm finally satisfied with version 4. A little bit of history on this. The first version I liked, and I thought it worked really good as a miner. Um, but I could not seal the interior due to the cockpit glass type of thing in the internal cockpit I was using. Essentially, there is a miner or one of these drills right in the way that doesn't allow it to be airtight. So then I messed with the configuration of the drills on version 2 and don't like the performance as well with the miner. It works, but it's more tricky, and these aren't all out to the outer edges of the miner. So then in a comment, there is someone saying that, well, hey, does it really need to have an interior? And I'm like, well, no, it really doesn't. So then I went through and I reconfigured this whole thing again, and I got rid of the interior and put in a prefab cockpit instead. Big problem with this one. I took it out and thinking, yeah, this is great. It works good. It fixed the airtight problem. Um, and in survival, when I was testing this with weights and volumes, filling this thing up to the max, and was really happy with how it was performing too. Because with at the time we had 14K harvest storage and 2K standard storage, completely full of ore with weights and volumes in. It it performed really well. In fact, it didn't even slow down that much, and it was very stable, and it wasn't leaning. And I was like, yes, yes, I got it. This is finally it. Until I tried to get out of the cockpit, and then what happened is it would like shoot you over to the side over here. It would smush you. You would break a leg, and then it would eject you about 100 feet in the air, and you'd fall to your death. So yeah, big problem there. So the last version is essentially that, but I had to, on the left side, carve out area over here so you could safely get out of the cockpit. So I had to kind of change it from one side to the other, and that actually fixed it. So now you can get out of the cockpit safely and walk right out the front over here. Um, Now, what I did do, since this, I reconfigured the back of this heavily as well. Um, so on the new version here, let me get out of God mode so it doesn't get all stupid. The new version has 16K harvest storage and 2K regular storage. It does have one of these health things in it. I suppose it doesn't need it, but it's there, had the extra CPU. It's also got a fridge, armor locker, and oxygen. Um, and of course a little ramp thingy there that triggers by a sensor. Now, what I also did on this is added in this little double door, which allows you to still kind of go in this if you really wanted to, but there's no reason to. Basically, this just gives person like so you know where all your parts are, like your core, your CPU block, some detector, Wi-Fi, all this fun stuff is inside of here. And if you wanted to mod it a little bit or add some more stuff into here, then you can do that. And then I field tested it again, and really, in my opinion, it's a very good performing miner at this point in time. It mines well. You'd want to be at a mining height of 1.5 meters when you're in tunnels. It's really has a lot of power, and it's running more of these hover engines on past miners, and it just has better thrust and stuff. And also at T2, well, let's take a look at the CPU real quick here. At T2, it is fine and with a multi-turret on it, and it still has a little bit of extra CPU, not much, but a little bit. But that is with everything intact. Now, when I do release this, it'll probably not have this on it, but simply due to the resources that this needs and the level requirements. So it's basically marked like you see over here, where you just put in a multi-turret there and you're all set. So other than that, final costs, final cost of how it would be released would be without that piece. It is 58-minute build time, roughly. It's going to require a couple titanium rods and a little bit of this stuff, and because of the drills and whatnot, some cobalt, it looks like. Or maybe that's the thrusters. That's probably the thrusters. So it's going to need some stuff, but it is a potent miner. Speaking of miners too, let me spawn one other miner in. I also redid the MCRN Mole T1. Let's see, this guy here. And this one was reconfigured a fair amount too. Now first it was kind of broken on the workshop. Differences between Alpha 11 and Alpha 12 in this case. When I tried to use it in game, it was over CPU, and also if you try to use the mining drills, it would cause your generator to be damaged because it didn't have enough power now. So those were all the things I went to address, and I updated the blueprint on the workshop at this point. Now it is in CPU again by 10 points, but it does leave it at 100% efficiency level. The back end got reconfigured. I did remove the med bay that was on it. Also a recommendation, I needed more CPU available essentially. The storage I dropped ever so slightly. It was at 14K, now it's at 13,875, so almost the same. Has O2, but it doesn't have many other features. It does have a detector, and it does have Wi-Fi and some exterior lights, but this is actually working quite well at this point in time too. So took it out in survival as well, and it seems to be able to handle a heavy load. It will slow down when you fill it all the way up, but it's still movable, and you can get it back to your base okay, and whatnot. So it's not too bad. This one is a lot more powerful though. It is a T2, and it's also more expensive. Now this one also dropped in build time some, so it's down to 27 minutes and 22 seconds, and this one requires nothing but the most basic resources, and it unlocks at player level 8 now. It used to unlock at player level 10. So happy with that. Good, cheap starter type miner. This one's better all the way around, but it costs more. So that's the deal with it. They both do seem to work pretty good right now. Anyway, moving on to the tank. And also, after the video I made Monday morning on doing the interior of the tank, I had a disturbing time. Not with Empyrion, but with a call from my mother that my dad was sick. Now my dad is in his 70s. He had a former health condition, and basically he was running a fever and was throwing up, and then a little bit later in the day got another call that he couldn't breathe. So he was brought to the hospital in an ambulance. We were pretty convinced that he had COVID, as he was out doing some things that I wasn't exactly happy about him doing, like golfing with his buddy. But, well, he was tested for COVID once, and it came back negative, but the doctors still thought he had it, so they tested him again, and it also came back negative. Turns out that no, he did not have COVID. Instead, he had an infection in his liver that caused the issue. So he is getting treated now in the hospital, and things are looking better. So that is good. I was extremely concerned, because if he had COVID, that means my mother would have also had COVID, and since I was recently over there to have breakfast with them, I could have had it as well. So it turns out it's not that, and it's kind of a big relief. However, he's still in the hospital, and he'll be there for several more days at least until they get a grasp on what's going on with his condition. But I don't think it's life-threatening. It's just something's wrong, and he got an infection. He's pumped up on antibiotics. He was originally on oxygen when they brought him there, but he's off the oxygen now too. So, and he can walk around and breathe fine on his own. So that is good. So it was a disturbing last couple of days, really, very very disturbing. Anyway, tank. So this is where it was left off last time. Basically, threw in a bunch of blocks and things, just trying to get a general layout of the interior on where the parts are going to go, how the storage is going to go. Now, it was brought up in the comments that if one of these storage chains gets broken, that it would screw up the storage, and that is true. And you know, to maybe double up these going across the top. And yeah, that could be done. I could see that would be a little bit helpful. Just keep in mind though, up above where the storage is, there's actually 2 more layers of combat steel in this whole section here. So it's not exposed even within 1 block to the exterior of the tank. And I would actually be far more concerned about the CPU tier blocks in that case, but they're kind of embedded under a bunch of stuff. I'm kind of evaluating on how much stuff would have to get blown up for that to happen. And another thing on this tank too, literally the way it's configured and the way that there's no real parts that make this thing work short of your reverse thrusters in the front of this area. Literally, I believe up to about where the core is, which is now here. Well, you probably up to about this area. Essentially, if I were to cut the entire front of this tank right off, it really would not shut this tank down at all. I mean, obviously you wouldn't have your Gatling guns or the stuff up there, but this thing is still going to be operational. I guess I'll have to evaluate how hits would come in on the top area. The AI would be shooting at the turrets and things like that. Some of these turrets could get destroyed and blown up, but there's at least 1 layer of combat steel below it. In a lot of cases, 2, and in some cases there's some storage under 1 of the layers of combat steel. I'll have to see how all that works, but right now I kind of wanted to get more into the inside and try to get that done. I guess some things can be reconfigured a little bit if it's necessary, but I you know, I think it would be good the way it is. It would have to take a heavy amount of damage for it to really matter. And then I think also with this, the ammo controller, which is 8K, is also the furthest one back from the front, a little bit more away from the turrets than the harvest and the main storage. So I think that part will be okay as well. So I think what I want to do right now is start to stylize this thing. Now right now, short of a fridge, Wi-Fi, and detector, I think all the main parts are placed, and that would be including the shield, all the generators, the CPU tier blocks, the core, pentaxa tank, clone chamber, med, all that stuff is placed. It's got plenty of CPU left. Not worried about CPU whatsoever on this build, and not worried about placing those last parts as they're really small and easy to place just about anywhere. So now this does have a lot of gaps in it too, and I'm debating on how I want to handle these spaces, like over there, and there's some gaps back in here and things like that, and there's different ways that this could be addressed. I'm not so worried about the sides taking the damage. There's a lot between you and getting into even where these parts are placed. I could fill in a lot more of this with combat steel, but that's going to weigh the tank down a lot, and I don't know if it's necessary. So I'll start thinking about that a little bit later here, but right now what I really wanted to do is start to get some stylization going on in this thing and try to make it prettier inside, definitely. Even on the back too, which would be weaker than the front, of course, but there is a fair amount of stuff between between the outside and even getting into the rear of the tank. And of course, with this firewall here too, that is to protect the player internally from getting shots from the rear, as well as any other angle, really. The most vulnerable part of the tank would be the bottom. And I'm not willing to double up the layers of the floor, because that would be a huge amount of added weight to it that I don't think would be very effective to really help. And I don't think these things usually will take much damage on the bottom unless something really goes strange in the battle. But at this point, how do we make this look nice and pretty? And that is a bit of a question here. So I'm going to start by digging into a little bit. I want to come up with like a standard format so everything kind of fits into place. And this is also Skaar as well. So the look is intended to be cruder than that of the humans or MCRN or even the Creel. And it's going to be pretty much, I'm not even going to turn on symmetry when I do this, because everything's a little different on both sides. So what I'm doing right now is just digging into here a little bit. I wanted to try to, God, that ain't going to work. Let me just take out those last 3 blocks I removed. Wanted to try to give it a little definition in here somehow. Like something to be seen in these flat areas one way or another. And of course all this is going to have to be built out of combat steel as well. But I'm just trying to think in terms of crudeness, like weird looking welded together metal beams and things. Maybe sometimes some unusual block combinations, like something like what was just done there. Add a little bit of something to it. It also has a pretty tall ceiling in here too. 3 blocks. I usually like to have 4 blocks. And this is going up 5 blocks. That's okay. I am willing to add a few more blocks of combat steel though. So if I'm going to put some in, I think if I were to put one behind the generators that way, that would help. Possibly a little bit. And then a lot of this I'm going to switch over to carbon substrate to try to keep the weights down on this. So to go with this crude look, I'm going to try to use a lot of these different kinds of blocks like this. Gives you a little bit more texture opportunity, a little bit of see-through stuff, I guess. Maybe I put some of those down there, and see in the center here. Maybe something like that. You know what, though? I got a better idea. For instead of those blocks, there is a thin block that has a little bit of a wedge at the tip. That would line up to that other block that was just placed. Keep it a little bit more uniform. Maybe like that. And let's grab another one of those. Let's see, now here. Let's mess with a wacky transition here. There are these 2 blocks, which could work for this particular case, I think. Get them rotated right at least. So, let's say we put one of those here, and the opposite one on the other side. And I can get like a little something weird going on here. And then how about something really unique? How about pipey thing here. Oh, the constructor. Yeah, give it a little bit of strangeness. So now here on this wall, what could be done here to make it look interesting? I think let's try some more of these things. Maybe like do a couple like that to a certain point at least. I want to keep a solid block right above each one of these so I can get an LCD displayed nicely there. And you know what? How about a couple more of these? Alright, so as in fridge, so I don't have that there yet. So we got some room here by this constructor. And you know what? I'm gonna put a row of combat steel behind these thrusters here as well. We do have a gap behind the constructor, which I might get filled in later, but see how things are coming out here. And you know what? I also want to put a couple more combat steel blocks there, and I might as well just do up the corner as well. Now, you know, this is also a great opportunity to throw in the shield right there, but I need some fridges and stuff. So let's get some of that. Probably already have them. Yeah, of course I do. In fact, I got fridges everywhere. Oh my gosh. Alright, so how about fridge, and then maybe a cargo box. Good old school cargo box for whatever. Kind of rotate this around to have it like facing forward. And then up here, how about some kind of blocks like that or something. Alright, and then up on the top here, how secure is that? Okay, so let's change these to maybe a row of that, and then a row of these. Give it a little curve, and I love this this shape here too, because you can get some neat texture lights on the edge there, which would be perfect for lining up to the drone hatch door. Alright, so now let's do a little bit of texturing here, see what can be done and how this will turn out. Obviously I won't be able to probably do this whole thing, at least on this video, because it would be just too long. But I just kind of wanted to show you at least the general method of doing all of this. And sometimes I'm concerned too, because the textures you get on the cargo extensions versus the regular blocks are different, and some of them match. Like I know this piece is universal between the two, but other textures are not. And this race also uses an awful lot of this crude metal texture here. So that'll be in there a lot. And I also use some of this occasionally. And some of this. seem to have the wrong block over here. There we go. Alright. Do that there. What could we put on the top? Once in a while I'll take a experiment and see if I can, how these work. Just a little bit of that. This is another universal piece that can go over the cargo extensions. Down here, could try that. Okay, this would be a neat little spot to get a little itty bitty little texture lights in here. Something I've been kind of doing with some of these is like doing something like that, which especially when it's a little bit darker, kind of really doesn't look too bad because you're not like overdoing the texture lights. They're nice and small. And let's see, then to find something to put here. This gets a little weird sometimes. This particular texture, it's scrunched like on one side, so it ends up like that, and that actually looks kind of neat too, but I don't want to overdo the lights. Yeah, let's just go dark and that for now. Alright, so then another aspect is color changes. Now right now this is all the same gray. I wouldn't mind getting like a stripe or something in here, just one way or another. So what I'm going to do is we'll shut this down, and then I'll go to like this alternative color here. Maybe do something like this across a row. And I'll try to line that row up to other things here later on. And of course try to texture behind all these areas too. Something like that. And let's go back. That'll have to be filled in. And how about some vent thingies over here? Alright. Let's see what else can be added here. Maybe a couple like that. Something like that. Try to get these textured behind here. Do a little bit of a fade here too. How about we go with a different gray, at least for now, up at the top. Maybe on the top up here as well. And how about down here? Core is going to have something in front of it yet too, so. get something back here to make it look interesting. It's a little tricky. It's a little easier to do this on CVs because the you don't easier to line yourself up to texture behind all this stuff. I used to remove the parts and then texture behind them, but most of the time now I've kind of learned to like be able to fly into the part so I can texture around it, which does save a little time. Alright, so flooring. Now one thing about the flooring that's kind of neat is got some options here, and there's something I do like to do occasionally, and that is to use that particular texture. I think I'm going to do it there instead, and then use some of this. Let's just kind of do a general plot here of where that would be. And why I'm doing it like this is because once you get the decals over those lights, it kind of hides them more and looks kind of neat because you get a little bit of illumination on it. So I'll say we did that there, and then a couple more here, a couple more there. Here and a couple there. Okay, so on the floor here, how about maybe a couple grates and something a little different to break it up. So I'm going to go through here and add decals. Do something like this. Doing quite all the parts right now. The idea. Make a nice little walk paths. Alright, finally get these textured below that. What to use here? Kind of want it to be a little on the crude side. Let's try a mix of that. I'll try all of this first. So here we can put something under there. Got some more. Once in a while, it's kind of fun to see what you get with this. But I'm looking for a certain shape, like that shape there and there. So I will return the rest of these to that. And then we got a couple interesting looking panels there. Is that color? It's starting to look like a wall there. Getting a little bit trimmed up. Okay, so the inner wall. And this is combat steel again, so what I want to first do here, and I'll probably just do it to the side as I'm going, is to get some kind of bevel here. Just debating on what block I want to use for that. Or a combination of more than one block. Let's try that. Let's do a combination of 2 of those and 2 of these. Oops. We should make sure they're rotated the same way. Okay, and the inside. No, wait, we got our drone hatch right there, so I don't really want to fuggle that up with a lot of stuff. Just trying to see what can be done here. Could try to get like a little venty thing in like that. Maybe. Okay, but I also don't want to forget my the off coloring in some of these areas. So I'll just kind of fill that in right now here. Should be this color. Do a little bit more up here, I guess, yet too. So I think the ceiling is this other standard gray. And try to get something in here a little different. Alright, so in here, let's get a couple texture. Oops. Might have to remove the door for this one. Or the bottom door at least. Yeah, that'll work out good. Get some stripe action going on though. Like that. Alright, let's get the door back. Now one other thing it's going to need too is an area for some switches. And stuff like that. So that's something I just want to keep paying attention to at least. We got some room up there for whatever too. Oops. The ceiling here. Now maybe something will go over those too. In fact, I wouldn't mind getting some more detail up in this area here somehow. Got a couple different options. Could use some of this stuff. We're tall enough so it shouldn't interfere with you. So say we did that, 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 which kind of lines up to where these other areas are already. Something like that. Kind of crude. Okay. Let's do something about this generator here. Couple things. Could use these. These shutter windows are quite strong. Or could use railing pieces, which are, well, cheaper, but certainly weaker. In this case, I'm going to leave it. Well, I think I'm going to go with these. They are heavier, but getting a little awkward stuff there. And let's see what else we can do in this little hallway chunk. How about some... Is there any opportunities to get something interesting looking in here? Maybe just some random little small stuff. Something like that there. Maybe some mechanical looking stuff. Still don't know what to put back there, but maybe there'll be something that comes to mind sooner or later. And you know what? I now realize too that where I want these LCDs, I don't want it I don't want it bright. So I think I'm going to manipulate this a little bit more. Let's change the color there. kind of looks awkward with those other things there. Alright, so LCDs would go over the top of that, saying what's in all these bins. Let's go with like a couple different colors for things here. It is gray on the bottom there too. That is a problem I've got. So actually, this row I do believe should be gray, and then okay, starting to look crude like I want it to. Okay, do one last little part here and get a light over here or two. Trying to think on good spots for lights that would give decent illumination. I kind of wanted to light up this area some. Could put a light facing that way, going that way. I do usually prefer them to be on the ceiling. Here, how about there? So let's get to this light, and the Skaar on how they're doing lights is the colors that they typically are using is gray and this orange next to it, and once in a while, if there's a transition, what I'll do between the two other light colors is use this one. Did that with the Raider, and I think also the Crawler. I'm gonna go with red here right now a little bit. This orangey red. It's kind of bright, isn't it? Let's tone it down a little bit. A little less range, and trying to make it so you can see the fridge at night, essentially. Let's put in another combination light over here somewhere. I'm not trying to be uniform with where I'm putting the lights. I kind of like the randomness of not having things on both sides and everything looking the same, I guess. So like maybe over here, what I'll do is purposely put in a gray light, mess with the settings a little bit differently. Okay, let's see what that looks like at night. So far, okay, so there'd be another light up in here, probably a light in this area as well. Let's just put something here, somewhere in this area for now. Just curious what it would look like if it was that shade instead. Yeah, but usually lighting is like one of the final things I'll go through and do once all the interior is done. I'll just kind of mess with the lights and play with the radius and the colors and their placements until I see a view that I think looks kind of neat, or and the stuff that I want illuminated is illuminated, such as parts you'd want to go to, things like that. Now LCDs will be in here as well, which add a little bit more to look at, I guess you can say. But you kind of got the idea of how I'm styling these insides, at least with Skaar. I mean, it's different with the different races a little bit, but it's the same general principle throughout the different races, just little variations on how they're done. And well, anyway, just curious if you got any questions, comments again on this tank. If you see any potential vulnerabilities in it. Now, and keep in mind it's still going to be strengthened up a little bit more. I'll probably again put some combat steel especially behind thrusters and things like that. And there'll be something over the core. Probably something like this here. Maybe some more blocks on the side, stuff like that. And then, of course, probably some decals as well. See, now I can say I don't really like my white strip right there, and maybe I ought to repaint this and have the white there and this real dark instead. Little things like that. Until you know, you just keep on working it until it looks good. You know, it's you can keep on changing it as many times as you need until you find that thing and you're like, oh yeah, I like that. It can take a little while on that for sure. Whoop. All right. Well, anyway, hope you enjoyed this, and I may just keep on continuing on this tank. I'm planning on releasing this this weekend. It could be Saturday or Sunday. I don't know yet. One of those 2 days, and hopefully it's all done. Following week, I'll probably release something else, or maybe even start upping the releases a little bit more. As I do want to probably get this one out pretty soon too. I haven't even thought about or started on anything for this month's Excalibur's challenge, which would be a tier 1 CV. To be honest, I never wanted to make a tier 1 CV, at least a starter. It's too restrictive. In game, I would rather save up the resources and have like the Pioneer or one of those starter CVs that would do everything I would want it to, and I know a tier 1's not going to. So what I'm thinking about, rather than trying to do a starter CV, is to do a specialized CV for something. And it might be a transport. When I was kind of messing around playing in the game a little bit, I had this issue where I wanted to take this miner and bring it to the moon. But of course, low level, don't have much resources, not real rich, didn't have a CV or anything like that at the time. So we took a also tier 1 SV, and we were able to put some docking mounts on the top of this and lift it up and bring it over to the moon, which is great, right? Except as soon as there was weight in here and a little bit of weight in there, or weight on the SV, it no longer had the power to lift it up. So went back to the planet, made some modifications to the SV, adding some more lift thrust to it, even putting it over the CPU. Came back again, tried it again, still didn't work. We already had this unloaded. We had the SV unloaded. It just wouldn't lift it up again. I don't know why. Finally, it did connect, and we started bringing it back, but then it vanished, coming back into the planet's atmosphere, and it was gone forever. So that kind of sucked. It was, I would say, another bug in the game again. So a little discouraging on that note. So then it was just done, and everything was for nothing, and kind of actually a waste of resources trying to get up to the moon in the first place with it. So I was thinking possibly of making some kind of really cheap CV that could move something like this early game. Could do it with an SV too, but it's going to have to be a bigger SV. You're not going to have it like a tier 1 SV moving a tier 1 miner that can carry a lot of weight. It's just not enough CPU available for the amount of thrust you need to pull that off successfully. So that's just loose ideas I've got right now, but I don't plan on doing a starter CV with a tier 1 because it's just, in my opinion, pointless. Wouldn't want it in game, probably never use it. So anyway, you all have yourself a good day. I will see you later.